Hi, thanks for having me today. I always enjoy coming out and talking to folks about what's going on with the National Association of Royalty Owners and some of our top issues right now nationally. Hope everybody knows www.naro-us.org is our website. Our current top issues on a national basis for royalty owners. Taxes. You guys probably get really tired of hearing me talk about percentage depletion and what's going to happen. A couple of big things happened recently. Last December, Senate Finance Committee Chairman Max Baucus released a draft tax reform package, and in that, your percentage depletion was taken away. This spring, House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Dave Camp did the same thing. He issued a draft tax reform package, and in that, percentage depletion was taken away. What does that mean? First of all, for the rest of this year, 2014, we're pretty sure that there's not going to be any tax reform taken up. I mean, it's election year. Things aren't functioning very well in Washington, D.C. right now, so you probably don't have to worry about any real action. However, when the Congress decides to get around to tax reform, and they will eventually, we have a really difficult position where we're going to start, because we'll start out of the equation, okay? Our position will be that we're not included in the deductions, okay? They've taken your deduction away from you. So what does that mean to you? That means that you guys are going to need to stay vigilant. You're going to need to keep calling Congress. We've got an action alert that's gone out several times about calling. Keep doing that. Be sure that your senators and that your representatives know what percentage depletion means to you. Show up at their town hall meetings, whatever, and let them know on a regular basis that you're watching them and that percentage depletion is very important to you. Another issue that's huge right now across the country, municipal takings. This is going on in New York, Colorado, California, Texas of all places. So again, what does that mean to you? What it means to you is that if a municipality decides to ban hydraulic fracturing or ban development, basically, then that's fewer bonus checks, fewer royalty checks coming to you guys. And you say, oh, well, I don't own any property in a city limit anyway. Mine's all in rural areas. Okay, what's to stop it from spreading? The antis want to stop oil and gas production. That's the takeaway here, is they don't really care about the local issue. In Colorado, they're kind of cloaking things as saying, well, we just want local control of what's going on. No, they don't. They want to stop oil and gas development, okay? So you need to pay attention to those municipal takings. If it comes up in your area, show up at the city council meeting and stand up and say, I'm opposed to this. I own mineral rights. This is my private property, and I have the right in this country to develop my private property, okay? And you need to be forceful about it. You need to get angry about it like I am right now. So don't just sit back and assume somebody else is going to take care of this for you. You need to get involved. Endangered Species Act, okay? Fish and Wildlife Service is being inundated by environmental groups with requests to list species as endangered. They have a real problem meeting those deadlines. And when they miss a deadline, the environmental organization will file a lawsuit against the service. The service is then obligated to go behind closed doors and negotiate a settlement with the people that have filed suit. So the environmental groups are not trying to save the prairie chicken. They're not trying to save the lizards in West Texas. They're not trying to save anything. They're trying to get money from sue and settle. On behalf of NARO, I sit on the board of directors of the Domestic Energy Producers Alliance. That organization, along with the states of Oklahoma, Kansas, North Dakota, I think Texas and New Mexico now, I'm losing count, have all joined in a lawsuit against Fish and Wildlife Service on the whole idea of sue and settle. So we're standing up for you guys. We're trying to fight this, because if today you might live in Pennsylvania and say, well, we don't really have any of these problems. Just wait, it's going to come to you. There's the list. You can go online to Fish and Wildlife and look at the list of recommended listings of endangered, threatened and endangered species across the country, and it's vast, okay? So we're watching that for you. Waters of the U.S. To explain things to you about the U.S. EPA and the Corps of Engineers and the way things work in this country, they regulate waters of the U.S. It used to be called navigable waters, okay? And we can kind of picture that, right? I can float a boat on it, so it's navigable. Then they change it to waters of the U.S. And this is important. We all understand it's absolutely the government's job to regulate our waterways and to prevent pollution and that kind of thing. It's a good thing, all right? But now, overreach, okay? They have proposed a new rule within EPA and the Corps where they're expanding the definition of waters of the U.S. Basically what it means is if you get your shovel and you go out in your yard or in your pasture and you dig a ditch, if during a rain event, water from that ditch can get to a navigable water, theoretically, the U.S. EPA now has permitting rights on you digging that ditch. It's the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard of in your life. Senator Vitter from Louisiana said this is the largest land grab by the federal government in the history of this country, and it potentially could be. We're watching that for you, and we're going to stay on top of it. Pay attention, please. We may need you guys to chime in. We're trying to get Congress to override this rulemaking process, and we may need your help, so please pay attention. The Fish and Wildlife Service has another rulemaking that they're involved in on permitting on wildlife refuges. And you say, well, that really doesn't mean much. Well, it does. Most wildlife refuges are surface lands that have been donated to them. And more than likely, the family that did it, they were being very, very philanthropic and helpful to the country and to sportsmen and everyone, and outdoors people, but they probably retained the mineral rights. So now there's a wildlife refuge on top of their minerals, and a company comes along and says, we'd like to develop that, okay? Now, Fish and Wildlife is saying we're going to promulgate new regulations so that we can now regulate that. What we're saying is it's not necessary. The states are in control, they can handle it. In a lot of cases, you can access those private minerals from off refuge properties, or you still need to allow access through the refuge sometimes to get to those properties. And in fact, on May 20th of this year, we were invited by a subcommittee of Congress to provide testimony. We had one of our Louisiana NARO board members present that testimony live before the Congress in our opposition to this new rulemaking. Another thing that we want you to be aware of, there's an awful lot of talk right now nationally about exports. You hear about LNG exports. That is allowed as long as they can get the facilities permitted offshore to export LNG. And now we're hearing an awful lot of talk about crude oil exports. Since the 1970s, that has been against the law because of the Arab oil embargo and all that brought up with it. But now we're starting to see all of this oil produced in this country. There are refining capacity problems along the Gulf Coast, and we need the ability to export our oil offshore. There are several studies out. IHS just did a study, and it talks about the benefits, and actually the projection is that gasoline prices will actually go down in this country if we're allowed to export our oil. When we send out an action alert, they'll look something like this. When Chairman Camp sent his draft legislation out on tax reform, we did this. We said, you know, you need to call these folks. Here's a little script that you might want to go by. The other thing I like to do in front of groups like this is talk about energy and why all of this stuff is important, why your mineral development is important, and what this is all about. To kind of put a global picture on this for you, if you will. If you look at the electric generation in this country and the source of generating that electricity, this is from the Energy Information Administration. I didn't make these numbers up, okay? The #1 source for generating electricity in this country is coal. Right behind that is natural gas. And then comes nuclear, etc. And you can see the list. New EPA regulations that are just proposed, probably go into effect next year, are going to take a bunch of that coal off the market, okay? And I'm not going to argue whether that's a good thing or a bad thing environmentally or whatever, but it's going to make prices go up. It may be good for you because of the natural gas. It's going to have to replace that coal. If you look at states, I want to show the 3 most populous states and what their source for generating electricity is. The #1 source in the state of New York is natural gas. The state of New York will not permit a horizontal hydraulic fracturing gas well. And we know the Marcellus runs under upstate New York and has significant quantities of natural gas. The state of New York, for what, 6 years now, has not allowed the drilling of those wells. California, the #1 source for generating electricity in the state of California is natural gas. It's huge. And most of that gas is not being produced in California. Texas. Actually, 3 or 4 years ago when I first started doing this presentation and generating these numbers from EIA, coal was the #1 source for generating electricity in Texas. Natural gas has now overtaken coal. The fun thing to see about Texas is that actually wind has a pretty decent number for megawatt hours generated. What does that look like in total? This is not just electric generation, this is the total amount of energy that we consume. And this was from 2011. And you look at the percentages, and everybody says, well, we'll just put up windmills and solar panels and solve all of our problems. No, we won't. And when they say that, you need to understand they either don't know what they're talking about or they're lying to you, okay? Total renewables, all right? And that includes hydroelectric, biofuels, wood, wind, all right, and solar, all right? It's 9% of our current energy mix. 9%. Of that 9%, solar makes up 2%. Wind makes up 13% of the 9%. So the idea that we can switch over and just put windmills up, it's ludicrous. We can, and we can do away with coal plant and natural gas and all fossil fuels, but we're not going to live the lifestyle that we have right now. So people need to understand when you hear that, oh, well, we're just going to put up solar panels, or we're just going to put up windmills, and it's the oil companies that are preventing this. No, what's preventing this is reality. We can't live our lifestyles, live the way we live, if we do that. So, very quickly, that's what's going on nationally and some of the national concerns we have, and things that we're looking out for on your behalf. And again, the kind of bigger picture about energy and what it means to you. I sincerely hope that the fact that you're here, you're wanting to be educated, you're wanting to know more about what's going on, but learn these things and understand them and be able to talk about them, so when you're standing in line at Starbucks and you hear somebody disparage about oil and gas production or hydraulic fracturing, you can say you're wrong, and here's why, and you can have the facts and figures. So thank you, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.